You're watching CCN, Clarksville Community Network. Produced by Goodwin Productions. Powered by CDE Lightband.
All right, you guys hear me okay? If not, I'll scream real loud. Hey, well, welcome, and thank you once again for joining us here tonight. We are really excited for this evening.
Gary and I started American Mobility Project along with our friend Bob Hyde because we saw a need in this country for civilians to have the most advanced mobility and adaptive equipment that is out there.
We cannot do what we do without the support of the community.
Thank you for your support, and thank you for entrusting us with your generosity. You've changed lives for the better, and you're going to have the opportunity to do that again here tonight.
$200 bill, give it down a half, in order to give it a half for it. $200.
Every donation, every fundraiser makes a difference in somebody's life.
I'm Charlie Kuhn, Vice President of Military and Corporate Business Development at F&M Bank. I spoke with Gary and Mary about the American Mobility Project, learning about the challenges and the successes of what they've been able to do. And I just felt like this is a great story to tell, and that the community really needs to learn more about what they do and how they can be involved.
You know, spreading the word, spreading the message, letting people know that we're out there, and that attracts other folks who may want to help us out, join the mission.
We can't thank you enough for your continuous support of American Mobility Project, so thank you.
We came across a lot of people, often in our travels, who didn't have it so good. They had one chair, maybe that chair didn't fit them right, maybe they'd been in it for 5 or 6 years and it was beat up. Some items like an iBot, because they are very expensive, was just out of their reach. So you knew that they just weren't going to have the opportunities that I had. And so that always bothered Mary and I. So one thing about being in a wheelchair, you soon realize how much you're missing out. You know, the world is not as accessible as we think it is. You find out just in everyday life, there are little obstacles put in your way, you know, a curb, being able to reach something high. Being in a manual chair at a social event, oftentimes I would find myself kind of in everybody's way. You know, down low, you're out of everybody's line of sight, so you get bumped into and people trip over you. And so by the end of the evening, I would find myself I'd sequester myself in a corner with my back to the wall just so I could see everybody. You know, when people would come up and talk to you, I always felt it was awkward. It was awkward for me and awkward for them. They were looking down, I was looking up, so they didn't know if they should take a knee, sit down. It was just always a little strange. So having that iBot and being able to be up at eye level with everybody else was very refreshing, very liberating, and you know, it kind of gave you a good sense of dignity again, because as human beings we were meant to stand face to face, eye to eye, and that's how we interact. And so the iBot allowed me to do that again.
Thank you.
We volunteered for many nonprofits since Gary was injured, and we learned a lot of things along the way.
If my memory serves me correctly, the first time I did any kind of speaking was at a elementary school in South Carolina. Mary and I, we would go there and we would just talk about citizenship, sacrifice, patriotism, the cost of freedom, and we would also talk about the importance of STEM, with the hopes of, you know, planting that little seed in their mind to pursue technology and hopefully, you know, as they grew older, who knows, you know, maybe invent something that would be life-changing to someone like the iBot was to me. And it was during this time that we start to realize that as a veteran, when it came to mobility equipment, I was well taken care of. And what the VA couldn't provide for me, there were plenty of nonprofit organizations who focused on veterans that were able to supply equipment. By and large, I was sitting pretty good.
You know, it's really cool having all this equipment, but then when you see somebody that doesn't have it, there is a sense of you wanting everybody to have it. You want people to have all the same opportunities, and people with disabilities deserve the same opportunities that all of us do, and sometimes it's just more equipment that can solve that.
So I entered the Army in 1987, enlisted first. I served as a ground surveillance radar operator. Did that for about 18 months and I went to flight school. In 1989, and following flight school, I was stationed at Fort Ord, California, which is where Mary and I met.
Gary and I met in, 1990, and we met on a blind date in Monterey, California.
I was there a couple years and we went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina with the 82nd Airborne. And then in 97, came here to Fort Campbell with the 160th, and that's where I remained the rest of my career, total of 23 years.
We've been married 30 years in April of 2021, so we made it. We're making it. We have 3 children. They're all adults now. They are 27, 28, and 34.
So I served a total time of 13 years with the 160th. The vast majority of that time was with a B Company, 1st Battalion, 160th, where I served as an AH flight lead, an AH-6 helicopter pilot flight lead. And so what our mission there was close air support to our Special Operations Forces and the War on Terror specifically.
I didn't have much experience with the military. When we moved to Tennessee, when Gary joined the Night Stalkers, he was deployed a lot, and a lot of times on short notice, he went for a lot of training. And then after the events of 9/11, of course, that amped up quite a bit. You know, I didn't ever really know where he was or when he was coming home. You know, we'd get that phone call and he'd be like, I gotta go. And I'm like, where are you going? When are you coming home? And he's like, I gotta go. It was kind of like a revolving door at our house when he would deploy and come back and deploy and come back. You just didn't know how it was gonna be. So I had to keep maintaining what was going on at home, even with him being in and out of the house so much. So it actually became something that was very natural in our lifestyle, and basically until it all stopped.
And it was on that very last one to Iraq is where I had my accident. The accident occurred on the 31st of May in 2008. I was deployed to Iraq. Had been there just a couple weeks doing the mission we'd always done. There was nothing really unusual or exciting about the night that the accident happened.
May 31st, 2008, I'd spent the day at the ball field with my daughter, and I had walked in the door. It was about 9 o'clock at night. When I walked in the door, the phone was ringing, and I answered it, and it was Gary.
We had just taken off from our base in Baghdad. We're flying out to the target area to support the ground forces when the helicopter I was flying experienced a mechanical failure. We lost our drive shaft, had to auto-rotate, ended up landing pretty hard. Some would call it a crash. I call it a crash, some call it a hard landing.
And he said, has anyone from the unit contacted you? And I said, no, and my heart sank because I thought something bad had happened to somebody. And he said, well, I was in a crash and I hurt my back. And I thought, oh gosh, he's gonna have a bad back forever. That's gonna be tough. And then he said, I can't move my legs.
Immediately, I was injured, sustained a burst fracture at a L1 and T12 and ended up paralyzed.
I had the wherewithal to have him talk to the kids, and they were 14 and 16 at the time. And so he talked to them, and it was probably one of the best decisions I made because they could hear their dad's voice and know that he was going to be okay. And We hung up the phone, and my son, who was 14 at the time, just looked at me and said, "Mom, this means he never has to go back, right?" And that kind of put everything back into perspective. He's coming home and he's going to be with us, and we still have him. I immediately went into management mode. What do? You figure out what you're going to do with your kids and your life and your career and your business and all those things when you're going to be gone in 2 days for who knows how long. And then I met him at Walter Reed 2 days later, and we spent the next 90 days in different hospitals until we came home.
So the recovery itself was somewhat difficult, but it was just a matter of the body physically recovering, and then trying to learn the skills I would need for a life in a wheelchair.
When Gary came home from the hospital after 90 days of rehab, we really spent the next probably year and a half in what I call the twirling season. You're just trying to figure things out. You're trying to figure out how you're going to fit a wheelchair through a bathroom door. You're trying to figure out how you're going to get anywhere in a car and make adaptations.
So the actual recovery in the hospital wasn't too bad. It was once we got home and really started to learn about what the injury meant. So I would say really the first 2 to 3 years after injury was the most difficult part of recovery.
And that's one of the reasons that we go out as part of American Mobility Project and consult with other people who are newly injured and try to help them through the transition time, figuring out how to do things and how to adapt your home. What are the best things to do? And then we started to see more hope in things like when Gary got the iBot wheelchair.
So I was pretty fortunate shortly after returning home. Well, just within a couple of months, my commanding officer of the regiment asked me if I'd be interested in what was called an iBot wheelchair. I really had no idea what that was and never heard of it. And he said, well, it's a power chair. You can go up and down stairs, and I think it stands up or something like that. So I said, sounds like something I would be able to use. I received the chair that October or November. Gosh, it really made a huge difference. And over the next couple of years, I used that chair quite often, and it enabled me to walk my dogs around the neighborhood, enabled me to go up and down stairs, and probably the coolest feature of it is the balance mode, where the chair will stand up on 2 wheels and balance using Segway technology, and it brings the user up to a sitting height of close to 6 feet.
The iBot allows Gary to do a lot more things with his mobility, but it also was great to see that Americans appreciated his sacrifice and people cared about you and your future and what sacrifices your family has made, and they want to make it better. So it's not only about the physical things and that the iBot can do, but also knowing that people care is sometimes what is most helpful in a tragic situation.
I met Gary and Mary Lynn Foote a few years ago at a dinner at F&M Bank, and Gary told the story of his accident and how they as a family came together to figure out how to move forward. A few years ago, they started talking about the possibility of starting the American Mobility Project. They came and told us about their mission and what they were trying to accomplish with this. We immediately jumped on board as a sponsor. Just being able to support them in the community has probably been the best thing we've been able to do for them.
Really just years and years of thinking about it. Finally in 2019 we decided to put thought into action, and we started the American Mobility Project. Mary and I and our good friend Bob Hyde. And our goal was just to provide people with the same equipment that I had access to. So the mission of American Mobility Project is to provide mobility equipment, adaptations, and resources with the goal of enhancing independent living for those with disabilities.
Because we saw a need in this country for civilians to have the most advanced mobility and adaptive equipment that is out there. Americans want to help people with disabilities, and we wanted to give them an avenue to do that.
So let me tell you what our goal was. There was a young girl here in Clarksville who was paralyzed when she was 5, and our goal was to raise the funds to purchase her an iBot. And our initial thoughts were, if all we are able to do is raise enough money to purchase that one piece of equipment and we're one and done, then we'll call it a success. But if the community's behind us and we're able to do more, we'll continue on. Really, 2020 was our first year. That's when we held our first fundraiser. We just had a tremendous success. The outpouring of support from the community was great. We were able to find some corporate donors who really helped out.
We accomplished a lot in our first year. We gave over almost $500,000 worth of equipment, 15 different recipients already in the last probably 14 months. It's incredible. And we could never have done the things that we've done with the American Mobility Project without the example of many people that have helped us along the way and shown us how to raise money and how to reach people, and really given us a lift up when we needed it. People are just stepping in to help, and I believe that God is just sending the right people, and we're here not to mess it up. Our first fundraiser, we went into it not knowing how this was all going to be received, if we would raise enough money for the one iBot, which was our goal. And at the end of the night, the way people stayed around after the event and talked and were so excited and were jumping on board and were anxious to help out, we thought, wow, we're really onto something. People are so supportive. Each time you picked up the phone to call to get people to come, I'm like, am I annoying people, or is this something they're on board with? And quickly we learned that people are on board and want to help.
So the second fundraiser, in the era of COVID, we were quite concerned how successful it would be. Combine that with poor weather here in Tennessee that we tend to get in the winter time. We ended up having to shift the dates of that fundraiser, had to shift it about a week. So we were really concerned that we weren't going to have the number of people we had the previous year. But once again, the community came out in full force. We had a great showing, 200 plus people there. The big difference at our second annual fundraiser is we were able to bring in many of the folks who benefited from American Mobility Project and the community's generosity. So we had a number of speakers who came in and were able to tell their story of how American Mobility Project was able to help them, and talked about some of the equipment they were able to receive, which was really nice. And that was the big difference between year one compared to year two.
The energy in the room was wonderful, and to be able to share the stories of our recipients and for them to share their stories is something that I find very powerful, almost like a gift to our donors.
Perhaps the funnest part of the evening for me was at the end when we had our 3 applicants up on stage, And we were able to inform them that they were not applicants, that they were indeed going to be recipients of the iBot. And I tried to do my best Oprah Winfrey impersonation. I don't know how well that went.
You get an iBot, you get an iBot, you get an iBot.
But you know, for me, that was the highlight of the evening, getting to tell those three wonderful people that they were receiving the iBot mobility device, and you can just see it in their face how surprised, shocked, and how grateful they were to going to be able to receive that iBot, and you just know it's going to change their lives. The first few recipients, we kind of reached out to them and asked if they would be interested in receiving an iBot, and many of them had no idea what an iBot was, so we'd bring them out to our house and we'd kind of show them the equipment. The process would just be, we'd have them fill out an application, find out if they indeed wanted the equipment, and then we'd raise the funds for it. At that time, once we had the funds, we'd go ahead and place an order. The individuals would have to get a prescription from their doctor, would have to go through a seating clinic so they had the seat measurements correct for the chair. And then they would go up to New Hampshire to Mobius Mobility, and they would get trained up on the iBot and bring it home, and it was theirs right after then. But in total, we funded 12 iBots. But some of the other equipment that we've been able to get into people's hands have been different variations of track chairs. We've also done an off-road stroller for a girl with special needs. We've done some adaptive shooting equipment. And then I think we've done a little bit of adaptive driving equipment for a few folks.
We prefer, state-of-the-art things that insurance companies don't pay for, obviously, to enhance their life, to enhance their independence or mobility. And that's one of the things I wish that all of our donors could hear and share and be a part of, or go to training and see that recipient in the chair for the first time, because it is such a life changer, and that joy and energy in each recipient is incredible. Mobius Mobility has donated a demo iBot to American Mobility Project. So we have the opportunity to have a potential recipient come over to our house. I've been trained on how to do the center of gravity fit for that person, and so it keeps it safe. I can program it in the computer. The recipient can come out to our house. They can try that iBot up and down, all over our property, which has a lot of uneven terrain and hills, and they really enjoy it. One day we had a recipient, Casey, come out, and Matthew was coming after him, and I didn't know if we're going to get Casey out in time for Matthew to get in. Our event is largely supported by the community. We had a big support by the Madison Room ownership and the Knots for that event, and they were super supportive in donating much of that night.
Unfortunately, any type of adaptive equipment, any type of power wheelchair, very expensive. The price of an iBot, we raised $35,000 to go against the iBot, and that pays for the iBot, and it also pays for all the travel, get them up there to get trained and get back home. You know, $35,000, that's nothing to sneeze at, and there's just no way we could do it, especially do it in the numbers that we've been able to do in the first year without that community support. And it really goes beyond just monetary support. It also goes in the form of, spreading the word, spreading the message, letting people know that we're out there, and that attracts other folks who may want to help us out and join the mission. And it definitely gets the word out there to other potential recipients.
In addition to the Clarksville community, which has been amazing and been wonderful supporters, we've been able to reach out to different people throughout the country, people that can simply write a check for a mobility device, or people that can write a check for 3 mobility devices. So we've been able to reach in the community and outside the community for our recipients. We also have so many people that are willing to give items for the silent auction, for the live auction, and not only that, then people show up and buy those things in great numbers. And of course, we have the pro Sammy to make it all happen, so that's great too.
I just want to let you know that Joe and Kathy Maynard have made a commitment of $90,000. And that right there is going to fund approximately 3 devices. Wow. All right, that's pretty awesome. I'm not going to hand this off to Sammy, and he'll get us going on the live auction.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, take your seats and get ready. We got some great items tonight, and I want to make sure I get all of you.
At the end of our formal event, we had the live auction, and Sammy. He went up there and did his thing, and it's hard to describe. He's got a wonderful talent.
Would you do it? Would you give me 8 1/4? I believe I would. Thank you. $50 to you. $50, give me 50. 50, you're out again. You stay out more than you do in. Give me 875. 875.
And he's able to reach out to the crowd, and he's able to tap into those folks that are interested in bidding on an item, and just eggs them on, to get them to bid more and more, and raise quite a bit of money with that silent auction.
It was through a tremendous amount of pain, and that pain continues to this day, that we arrive at this place. But it also has given us a purpose to make this happen, and it is changing lives. Even though it's through a lot of hurt, it does change lives, and there is a lot of good out of it. We just want to help in any way we can.
I'm really proud of not only my wife and Bob Hyde for doing all the work they've done to make this a success, and I'm really proud of our recipients, how they've been able to take this equipment and just go out there and live life to the fullest.
And it's just given me definitely a heart for.
We can be best reached at AmericanMobilityProject.org. There is a direct link on there. It also has information with our mailing address and phone number, so we can be called anytime. We'd love to hear from people with any kinds of questions they have.
Every dollar given makes a difference. It's making a difference in somebody's life, and whether it's a huge donation from a endowment or a corporation, $100,000, maybe one day we'll get $1 million donation, or if it's $1, it's making a difference, and it's changing somebody's life.
Moving forward, we just want to get more people involved. We want as many people as possible to know and share the story about American Mobility Project. We want people to bring in new possible recipients, let us know about them, new possible donors, just kind of growing it the same way we started it.
We think that we are doing what God has planned for us to do in this season of our lives. So our goal is to continue to grow the organization and really help as many people as we can. And we'll keep doing that until it's time to stop.
For current and exclusive content, subscribe to CDE Lightband, connecting you at the speed of light.